Hi, and welcome to the Wise Fish Chess Academy with another video in the GCT 2025 Superbet Classic in Romania. Today's round 7 presents a game between Abdusattorov Nodibek against Jan Krzysztof Duda. Now, this is for those of you that like constrictor chess, this is the epitome of it. Positional chess that when Duda suffered in this game from move about 10, 12, 15 until the end of the game. Now it's a beautiful masterpiece. And I love this game. The strategy around it was just sublime. These young men are there to take over from the old generation. With the white pieces, Abdusattorov Nodibek and Jan Krzysztof Duda with the black pieces. Now, this game went at b4, with b5, knight f3, knight f6, and we have the queen's pawn game, the Colle system. Popular system, and with this game, I actually got to even love it more. It just shows so much instructive play. I've played in a number of games, especially in Blitz and Bullet Online, where I played this, but I haven't played it to that precision. This is just a beautiful learning place for myself and hopefully for you that are watching this video. So the d3, e3, d6, e6 was played. This will be b3, c5, b3. Now, a lot of players opt to play the c3 instead and go for ideas of knight b2, and so on, and then maybe queen to e2, strike in the center, and so on, castle on the king side, maybe even play things like b4 and undermine a few things here. It's just a waiting move. It's just a waiting move, and a restrictive move preventing the knight or bishop from coming to the square of b4. However, b3 was played, and this is unique because it just helps the bishop go to b2 or to go to a3 later on. And with normal things afterwards, knight to b2 usually is the most common, helping ideas like c4 be played at some point. And sometimes even knight goes to a3 and goes to b5. So let's see what happened in the game. Captures the pawn, b6, castles, bishop e7, queen to e2, preventing a usual line that Magnus Carlsen likes to play, bishop to a6, and just take away any aggressive piece. Just take away this bishop simply, and then be able to rush you into an endgame and just make you look so weak. So queen e2 undermines that square, and then we have castles, bishop b2, a5, a4 restricting that, and then we see ideas, bishop b5, just a move. If you take the queen is centralized on the b5 square, so queen goes to c8. Now b4 is played, c4 is played, and at first during the annotation of this game, this bishop all of a sudden looks a bit awkward because bishop can go to b7 and just leave it there. Thankfully, they are moved back later on when the rooks get to the c5, which is what you expect anyway, and then this pawn can move forward and the bishop frees itself once again to get back to b3 square. And again mount pressure on the b1 h7 diagonal. So c3 is played, rook goes to a7, knight goes to c3, rook goes to c7, knight dominates the center. This position is quite very stable. Black actually really struggling to get some play. The advantage for white is plus 0.7 according to the engine, and that is not bad, basically still equal, it's only just slightly better. So bishop now moves away, but I'm still keeping this bishop here looking a bit ridiculous for now. The bishop actually turned out to be a very, very powerful one. So rook comes to b1, rook a to d1, rook to d8, and rook basically now getting towards the king side. This is typical, very aggressive players. They're getting more pieces onto this line. Whenever that happens, let's expect rook f3, rook g3, rook h3, all those options, and some sacrifice on any of f7, g7, like h7 pawns. So you have to be really, really careful. So knight gets to a6, rook to f to d1, knight attacks rook to g1. certainly that's where it was going. Black doesn't have a good way to progress unless he uses ideas of like, capture and then maybe get your knights to the center or get your bishop become active. But still in this position, there's not so much that you can achieve with that, since the pawn, when you capture the pawn, you have to back, and still you do not have access to the d5 square. So here, captures that will happen in the game, and then rook goes to d6, h4. Interesting move. Queen goes to f8, and the engine doesn't like that move at all. It does not like queen f8 at all, and yet it looks okay from the human perspective. I would play that move also myself somehow, even like that at all. So h5 is played, h6 just to prevent that from coming. Then bishop goes to c1. Now you have to be really careful. Of course, the idea was simple. Bishop takes on h6, and I mean, you can't capture big. So when you move away, to prevent it. However, the pressure is still there. Now you can see this idea is there. Knight is still hitting f7, which means the queen is now stuck on f8. So bishop improves, and now there's a direct attack here. He really needs to get one of the rooks away. He plays rook to c8. Rook comes back to put pressure. Now the idea is quite simple. He's probably thinking of undermining this and maybe playing a move like knight, check there, and then rook comes. So you have to be, and both bishops will be defending. So you have to be really careful now in this setup. So knight goes back, and yeah, easy. That's what it went for. You cannot take it. On top of that, your rook is actually indirectly being attacked by the bishop. So there's so much that is going on board at the same time. The position is plus 2.5. So it's a critical position for Dudlan. He has to really be very, very careful with it accurately as he can. And he stands Abdusattorov in the driving seat and going for the victory. So knight comes to c5, centralizing it. Rook comes to e1, just taking it away from this, from the pin here on b file, and then rook goes back. So at least now we have removed some pressure, taken away the rook from the diagonal of the bishop on f4. So bishop comes to exchange, black doesn't accept it, queen goes to f3, and now the king comes back because the rook has moved to free up the queen. But look at the queen can't move, just stuck on this swap. So it's can't move away from there. So you can see how the position is really struggling for black. Abdusattorov is really doing very good positions here. So knight comes to b5. It's not doing so much, so maybe you can just take away an aggressive bishop for a knight, which was not really doing so much in the game. Again, that's very instructional, basic information for a player at this level. So bishop comes there, and then he allows bishop times 6, takes, takes. Now the position is really critical. With that move, which the computer doesn't complete, is a very strong defensive move. Computer doesn't give one bit. And indeed, to e3, rook defends rook take, and the position becomes a bit tricky. So king moves, then takes at that moment. But now here, it's tricky for an average player might not find a good way to actually continue this position. You need this bishop, to also get in. And for now, it is locked in by its own pawn, and even then by the knight on c4, which is still holding onto the square of d3. So we have queen check, king goes down, then takes. Then knight goes down attacking the rook. Then bishop comes finally, threatening a mate on h7. So knight, it's f6 is a squeeze. Queen attacks, just moves away. And you can't really, I don't know, can you take this? If you take this, what happens? If you take this, the position becomes a little bit tricky, because rook times d5, and then queen f6, and that's a checkmate. So you actually cannot take that. So plays rook d7, rook puts pressure on the other rook, knight goes back, bishop attacks rook, and again you cannot take that pawn because the rook will be hanging. Then rook comes back, and of course now he's threatening it. This move, game is becoming really messy. Then second rook coming to put pressure there, queen moves away, rook take, King goes up, rook check, knight defends, queen check, then takes, and then we have f4. So the game ended at this moment. Grandmaster Duda Jan Christoph resigned. If it was me in this game, I was probably laughing at myself because he had no chance the entire game. It is so sweet when you are the one doing this to your opponent, not when you're the one on the receiving end. So a big congratulations to Abdusattorov, which pushes his position upwards and helps him rise in the standings. This is a beautiful masterpiece in the Colle system. For those that love the Colle system, it's a game that you want to study in some detail. Thank you again for watching. Just continue to subscribe, invite your friends to the channel, and enjoy the watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.